12-year-old Oscar, Care Hedebrandt, is so wimpy that he's constantly picked on by the other boys at his school, especially Connie, Patrick Ridmark, and his two friends, Martin and Andreas. Out of fear, Oscar never fights back. In the evenings, however, he sits in the courtyard rehearsing knife attacks on his tormentors. One evening, Oscar notices a new girl about his age and her father moving into 15, the apartment next door to his. Oddly, the first thing they do is to cover the windows with cardboard. Oscar doesn't know is that Håkan, per Ragnar, is not Eli, Lena Linderson's father. He is her Renfield and Eli is a vampire. It is Håkan's job to bring Eli fresh blood, which he gets by killing other humans. First he anesthetizes them with halothane, then he strings them up by the feet, slits their necks, and catches the blood in a jug, leaving the bodies to be discovered the next day. Unfortunately, for Eli, Håkan is having problems securing blood for her. On his first kill after moving into the new apartment, he either lost or forgot the jug filled with blood. Consequently, Eli is beginning to get hungry. One evening, as Oscar is in the courtyard stabbing a tree in lieu of his tormentors, he notices Eli watching him. She's not very friendly, as she tells him right off that she can't be friends with him. The next evening, they run into each other again in the courtyard. Oscar notices that Eli is not wearing a coat even though it's the dead of winter in Stockholm. What's more, she's not even cold. And she smells bad. Still, Oscar shares with her his Rubik's Cube and shows her how to work it. After Oscar has gone inside, Eli goes hunting. She waits in the shadows under a bridge. When two neighborhood friends, Jock, Michael Rahm, and Lacka, Peter Karlberg, part company, and Jocko walks under the bridge, Eli calls out, "Help me." Thinking that the little girl has fallen, Jocko picks her up. Suddenly, Eli latches onto him and bites his neck. Gösta, Carl Robert Lindgren, a friend of the two men, sees everything from his apartment window. By the time he is able to stumble into the Sun Palace Cafe and get help, however, Jocko's body is gone. Håkan has already covered up the killing by tossing the body into a pond, but they do find Jocko's blood in the snow. The next morning, Oscar finds that Eli has solved the Rubik's Cube and left it in the courtyard. When they meet there later in the day, Eli is a bit more friendly, taking the time to explain to Oscar how she went about solving the puzzle. She also smells better, but it's odd that she cannot remember her birth date when Oscar asks. Since Eli doesn't know her birth date, she doesn't celebrate her birthdays and gets no presents, so Oscar offers her the Rubik's Cube. The next day at school, Oscar stays after class to copy the symbols for Morse code from the encyclopedia. On his way home, he is confronted by Connie and his two friends. When Connie orders Oscar to show him what he copied from the encyclopedia and Oscar refuses, Martin grabs Oscar and Andreas begins to whip his legs with a stick. As an added measure, Martin slaps the stick against Oscar's cheek, gashing it. Oscar later tells his mother that he fell during recess. But when Eli asks what happened, he tells her the truth. Eli tells him that he must start to fight back. If so, they will stop tormenting him. If they don't stop, Eli promises to help him. Oscar shares with Eli the Morse code that he copied from the encyclopedia. That night, they practice tapping on the wall that separates their apartments. The next day at school, Oscar signs up for the weightlifting program. Later, he takes Eli to a candy store and offers her a piece. At first, she refuses, then she tries one. Oscar finds her heaving on the sidewalk around the corner. He hugs her. Eli asks him whether or not he would still like her if she wasn't a girl. "I guess so," Oscar replies, not quite understanding what Eli is asking. As the friendship between Oscar and Eli deepens, Håkan starts feeling a bit jealous. He tries again to obtain blood for Eli. This time he preys on a student alone in the weightlifting room, but he is interrupted when Matt, Christopher Boland's friends come to pick him up. Knowing that he is trapped and about to be discovered, Hakan pours acid on his face so that he can't be identified. When Eli learns that Hakan has been taken to a hospital, she shows up asking for her father. The desk clerk tells her that Hakan is on level 7, so she climbs up the outside of the building until she gets to his window. Hakan lets her in and offers her his neck. After Eli drinks his blood, Hakan falls to his death. Eli returns to the apartment building and taps on Oscar's bedroom window, asking to be let in. Oscar is almost asleep, but he tells her to come in. Eli crawls into bed with him, and Oscar notices that she doesn't have any clothes on. He asks her whether she'd like to go steady with him, and Eli replies, "I'm not a girl." That doesn't seem to bother Oscar, so they decide to go steady. The next morning, Eli returns to her own apartment, but she leaves a note for Oscar that reads, "To flee is life, to linger is death. You're Eli." One afternoon on a school outing to a local pond for some ice skating, Connie, Martin, and Andreas again confront Oscar with a warning that they are going to push him into an ice hole. This time, however, Oscar stands up for himself and takes a swipe at Connie's head with a stick, causing his ear to bleed. At the same time, two younger students gone off to pee behind some trees notice a body frozen in the ice. The police are called, and the body is cut free. Later that afternoon, after school is out, Oscar brings Eli to a basement room at the school. When Eli asks why they're there, Oscar pulls out a knife and cuts his palm, offering to mix bloods with her. Watching Oscar's blood drip on the floor, Eli can no longer stand the hunger that she's experiencing now that Hakan is not providing her with blood. She falls to the floor and begins to lap up Oscar's blood. The body stuck in the ice is identified as that of Jocko's. Jocko's drinking buddy, Laka, Peter Karlberg, and his girlfriend Virginia, aka Nord, try to convince Gosta to tell the police what he saw the night that Jocko was murdered. During the discussion, however, Laka defends his closeness with Jocko by pointing out that Virginia is cold, consequently, Virginia storms off. Laka follows her to the subway where Eli jumps on her. Fortunately, Laka is able to kick Eli off before she kills Virginia. Unfortunately for Virginia, Laka's save only means that Virginia is doomed to become a vampire. She notices the change the next morning and she opens the blinds and quickly closes them again. That evening, she visits Gosta's apartment looking for Laka, but she is viciously attacked by Gosta's cats. Later, in the hospital, Virginia realizes that she's been infected with something and decides that she doesn't want to live. She asks the doctor to open the blinds to her room. Immediately, she is consumed in flames. A wimp he might be, but Oscar is not a dummy. He has figured out that Eli is a vampire and confronts her. Knocking on the door to her apartment, he is let in to see that there is no furniture and that Eli smells bad again. When Eli comes to his apartment and asks to be invited in, he stalls, asking her what would happen if he didn't invite her in. Eli steps inside and begins to bleed from various places on her body. Oscar relents and invites her in. Eli explains that she drinks blood because she has to. Apparently, Oscar understands, as he allows Eli to shower and put on one of his mother's dresses. As Eli dresses, Oscar peeks in the door and notices that Eli has a horizontal scar across her public area and no evidence of a vaginal slit. Note, in the novel, Eli was born male and castrated at age 12 by the vampire that turned him. When Oscar's mom comes home, Eli immediately scampers across the window from Oscar's apartment to hers, even though it's 2 stories up. The next morning, Oscar finds a note from Eli asking him whether he wants to meet her that evening. Laka has somehow traced Eli to her apartment. He breaks in and finds her asleep in the bathtub. Because he can't see in the dark, he rips open the cardboard covering the windows. Oscar, who was in the apartment waiting for Eli to wake up, screams, "No," giving Eli sufficient time to jump on Laka and drink his blood. After feeding, Eli thanks Oscar, but informs him that she must go away. That night, Oscar looks out the window to see Eli moving. The next day, Oscar gets a call from Martin, asking whether or not he's going to be at swimming practice that afternoon. Martin also tells Oscar that he thinks Oscar was right to stand up to Connie. That afternoon, while Oscar is in the pool, someone starts a fire in the trash bin out back, forcing the attendant to leave the pool area unattended. As Martin distracts Oscar, Connie, Andreas, and Connie's big brother Jimmy, Rasmus Lutthander, enter the pool area. Jimmy orders everyone else out of the pool. When they are alone with Oscar, Jimmy gives Oscar an ultimatum: either stay underwater for 3 minutes or have one of his eyes poked out. Oscar's eye for Connie's ear. Then Jimmy grabs Oscar's hair and pushes him under. A minute passes. Suddenly, feet can be seen skimming on the surface of the water, followed by Jimmy's severed head, and then Jimmy's severed arm. An almost drowned Oscar is pulled from the water by Eli, who has just slaughtered 3 of Oscar's tormentors, leaving the 4th sobbing on the side of the pool. Epilogue: Oscar sits on a train. Snow is falling outside. A large basket sits in front of him. From inside the basket comes a rapping. Oscar raps back in Morse code, PUSS, Swedish for kiss.